Hey there, Nick Jantakis here. In this video, we're going to go over a debugging adventure on how I learned today that Django 4.1 is going to cache your HTML templates by default in development, even if you have debug set to true. So I didn't know that before a couple of hours ago, but I do have this example Dockerized Django app. It's up on GitHub, it's open source, ready to go, and yeah, I noticed that code reloading stopped working consistently when updating HTML templates. And by the way, I already know the answer here because I did it off video, but yeah, I think there's some value in going over the debug process and how to figure this one out. So this all started yesterday where someone made a reply in a different issue here saying that, they're having some issues here where, yeah, Tailwind and CSS is reloading just fine, but when editing HTML files, they need to stop and just rebuild the project to get them to work. So I commented just saying, hey, by the way, make sure that debug's set to true in your env file, as well as making sure the volume is all configured and ready to go in the env file, and making sure that web reload is true, because in this project we are using gunicorn in development and production. And yeah, all three of these values are set out of the box. If you just clone down this repo, everything is going to work. Also, I just threw out there, if you happen to be using WSL2, it's a really good idea to put the files in WSL2's file system instead of being mounted through Windows Drive. I've noticed that for certain file watchers, something gets lost in between mounting the drive into WSL2 in terms of, the file being detected that it was edited. So putting it in WSL2's file system, really good idea. It's also going to be way faster than mounting it. But yeah, they said all of that is already set up and good to go. They also mentioned that they are using WSL2, but they did test it on an M1 Mac, and they had the same exact issue there. So usually, and a lot of times, especially when I'm doing course support, folks will just ask me questions in the discussion board, and oftentimes, I'll throw out a reply like this, and usually it's one of these things, right? But in this case, yeah, I actually cloned down the project fresh into a temp directory, ran it on my dev box, and I was able to reproduce the problem. So the idea here is, if you try to edit this, sentence here, or maybe one of these phrases up here, you wouldn't see the update, and you would have to actually stop the project and then re-up it to see that, and that's not good. But yeah, after that, I opened up this whole dedicated issue here where I kind of just documented what I tested and what I tried, and yeah, maybe I'll jump back to here as a reference if I need it, but let me go and jump into a code editor just so we can see the situation at hand here. So I am running the project here. I just ran a Docker compose up here, and that's what we see over here. And this has the unpatched version. So, let's go into something like this layouts file here, where this is the outer shell of the HTML. It's basically the project HTML index file. You can see the Django version, Python version, and the debug, and then we also just have this block here for the body and the little bit of the footer, and that's the structure that we basically see over here. The Pages application has its own template, which loads us the home page here, and we'll see that in a second here. But check this out. If I just want to add some exclamation points here before this and save this file. We can see the file is saved here, right? There's the git diff there. And if I go to the browser and reload, well, I am reloading here, reload, and it's not showing that at all. And that's kind of interesting because, I swear a couple of weeks ago when I did this, things actually work. And, while I don't personally develop in Django in my day today as like a hardcore Django developer, I've had so many different contracts over the years where, I was helping folks deploy their Django applications in Docker. So, I know my way around Django enough to be dangerous. I kind of, I've seen a lot of different project structures. I kind of know how it works. Basically I can read the code, et cetera, but I'm not like a hardcore, grizzled veteran with it. But still, this stuff, I do test all this stuff before I push things. So yeah, we can see it didn't make a difference. And if I go to the home page here, this template, then, this is like learn the Docker fundamentals, blah, blah, blah. If I just start adding some exclamation points there, or maybe some A's there, we can see the file has been added, and we go to the here and nothing. We don't see the changes there. And I've got an example Flask application, which is also using the same exact version of Python, same exact version of gunicorn, and all the code reloading works there. And also, just to test here, if I go into the app.js file here, maybe I'll just throw an alert here or something like that. Now the file is saved here. If I reload, we should see that alert here. Yep, that all works. That is because ESBuild is watching that file there, and with the CSS, Tailwind is working, but we're not going to bother testing that. Like, whatever, that works. But yeah, this is the interesting scenario here. So these things aren't updating. And of course, I would have to kill this project, up it, and then you can see the changes here. But, I'll save us the time of having to do that. You can just trust me on that one. But yeah, so usually when things like that happen, I usually start by just, well, this has happened previously in many different scenarios. Like sometimes due to the way Vim writes files, I've noticed that file watchers just happen to not work when using Vim. So or you have to configure Vim in certain ways to make it work. So one thing that I did initially was, I just used nano to edit the file instead of using Vim. So let me bring this one back to how it was before. Yep, this is how it was before. If I go here and, I don't know, nano this, what is it in source templates? Well, source templates, I said. There we go. Layouts, index. Okay, cool. So, if I go here and go to here, let's see, add some text over here, right? And then I'll write that file out and save it. File has been saved. Go back to the browser, reload. Nothing works. That is super interesting. And now keep in mind, like, I know the answer while I'm doing this video here, but I started just debugging and I'm like, well, I don't know, like, what is going on here? Like, this application is configured to actually read this from an environment variable, this debug. So, I went into my env file. Let me actually, let me revert this back. Well, whatever. Let me revert it back. Fine. Okay, cool. And I'm going to exit there. Yes, I don't want to save. Good, whatever. Okay, cool. So if I go to this env file over here, we can see this is where we have debug set to true. And somewhere down here is web reloading, and this is, gunicorn. So I don't want to do a deep dive in this video about this, but know that gunicorn has this reload property, and it can either be set to true or false, depending on, you can hard code it, you can put it in there, however you want. And yes, I understand that, this is being deprecated in Python.3.12. I will replace this with something else when that time comes. I think right now it's in like an RC version. It's going to be a bit before 3.12 ships, basically. So yeah. Okay, so what I did first of all, I went to my config settings here, which is where all the Django configuration is, and we can see that debug is set to reading in from this environment variable. So one of the first things that I did was, well, okay, since we're dealing with one level of abstraction here with everything running in Docker, I usually find just throughout debugging, it's a really good idea to see the state of your container to make sure that the files in the container are what you expect them based on how they exist in your dev box. So for example, in this project that has this idea of a run script, I've done videos about this one, but I can do just run shell here. We can see that's number 17. That's going to throw me into a prompt inside of the running container here. And from here, I can run something like the env command, which is going to dump out all the environment variables in the container. And yeah, let's take a look here. Well, we got lucky. Well, lucky in terms we found it very quickly, but web reload is set to true. So, that environment variable is being read correctly. Debug down here is also set to true. So that's looking pretty good. But, let's be completely safe here and maybe throw open a Python interpreter here and just see if those things actually work. So I think I need to import OS. What else do I need to import? Yeah, I need to import this because basically we're just going to read it from Python just to make sure that things are actually set up correctly here. So if I do this here, then we should get true back like that. Yep, cool. So that means, it's trying to read the environment variable debug. And it got false here. If this isn't defined, it's going to default to false. But in our case, it's set to true because Y in our env file is there. So yeah, the container is seeing the envs, Python interpreter is seeing the envs. It's probably likely that the Django settings file is also seeing the env too, right? So, let's just print debug to see what that is. And for good measure too, I don't know, let's just, well, it wouldn't matter printing literally this because that's literally what debug is there. But yeah, let's save this file and see what's up. So we go to the terminal over here and we can see that we actually get true over here. But look at, wait, what? Like code is reloading? Let's see. Oh, wait, hold on a second here. Things have updated. That's kind of interesting. Yeah, so this led me to think like, okay. And by the way, this whole debugging process, I don't know how long it took me, half an hour. Like, I'm not trying to like brag and be like, oh, I was done in half an hour. But whatever, there was like methodological like steps or whatever to get this all to work. But I started thinking like, well, I'm not like a grizzled veteran with Django, but if I go back to this index file over here, it's like, well, that's kind of interesting. Like I modified the layout file and that worked. So like, maybe if just editing the layout file works, but not the other one works, but we saw that that wasn't the case there. But I found myself like just jumping between going to the settings file, doing things like this, where it's like, oh, well, I'll just like set this to true, like hard coded like that, and like just eliminate the variable completely. And that made no difference. But yeah, check this out. If I go back to this index file here, get rid of all this here. So now it's just back to normal. We can see, it's back to the state of the Git file there. If we do this, we can see that it has been adjusted there. And if I change it again to, I don't know, exclamation points again, reload this and reload that, no changes. Okay, cool. Let's go to the settings file, do this and maybe hard code it to true, comment out that and go here, reload the file. Wait, then it's working now. I mean, this is pretty crazy, right? Especially like I'm trying to save you some time throughout the video, but like, you know, I was bouncing around between using Nano instead of Vim. I tried VS Code. I tried using the editor that was in the container, which is actually nothing. So I ended up just using sed to do like a find and replace in the file. And I was still getting the same results as Vim. And like, I know this project worked. Like a couple of weeks ago, like it worked. But yeah, I went through all sorts of different processes like that. You know, likewise, I went into the gunicorn config file. You know, I hard-coded reload to true there just to make sure that was working. Hello again, this is Nick from the future. While editing the video, I forgot a really important point here, which was, you know, if you just hard code this file and save it, the reason why we were able to see the update from the HTML is that the act of editing this settings file, or basically any Python file, such as a views file, will cause Django to invalidate the HTML cache, which allows you to see the updated template. That's why things were pretty confusing when I was jumping between different editors. And yeah, I was going back and forth editing this file, the gunicorn config file, and those were causing the cache to be invalidated. So it was driving me bonkers trying to figure out the actual root cause, but yeah, that was the root cause right there. And yep, I will resume the normal video now. See you in a second. Yeah, I also went into my env file over here near the top of the file. And, you know, I've done videos about Docker Compose profiles and how amazing they are. But, you know, I disabled the assets container here just because I know in the compose file over here, both gunicorn and the watchers for ESBuild and Tailwind, you know, we're both dealing with a volume mount that's essentially mounted to the same thing because, you know, this file in the env file is also mounting to this. So I thought, I don't know, maybe there's like competing mounts. I just recently updated ESBuild to 0.17, which actually required quite a bit of ESBuild code changes. So I thought maybe something with the watcher may have changed. So let me like eliminate the assets completely and just see what's up there. Nope, still the same problem there. And again, like it all worked completely fine with Flask using very similar code there. Yeah, so after all of that, like, and if I jump back to this issue here, you know, I kind of just documented all these things out. So it's like, okay, cool. I'm running Django 4.1, you know, it's in my requirements set text. And, you know, I just have the application set up to print out the exact version of Django that you have there in this views file for the page. We can see here, we're just setting some context variables for debug in the Django version and the Python version. Yeah, these are just like standard things, whatever. Okay, so, you know, in the issue, and keep in mind, like I am the owner of this repo here, so I'm like opening my own issue in the repo, fine. So, you know, on the latest main branch of this repo, editing gunicorn, or editing HTML files, gunicorn just isn't picking up the change, right? I was using Django 4.1, Python 3.11. I just downgraded to Python 3.10 also, just to do a check there. That was very easy since I'm using Docker. All I had to do here was just change this one line to Python 3.10.10, like whatever the latest version was, rebuild the image, tested it. Nope, still not working. Tried a whole bunch of different code editors. We saw that, right? I'm going over the situation here. I pasted out some outputs here, just saying like, you know, I tried all these different things. And it's basically what we just saw now in the video a few minutes ago. Also, I should mention that in my settings file here for Django, this is originally, let me also undo a lot of these changes here so we're back to normal. Yeah, so this is originally what my templates list looked like over here. You know, most of this is like straight from Django's documentation. You know, if app is true, you know, it's listening for the, or it is set to the templates directory here for DIRs. And everything was basically the default options here. And I didn't really mess with this too much. And prior to Django 4.1, this would actually work. But yeah, I put that in there. You know, is this not correct? Like, you know, again, yeah, I also mentioned, you know, all sorts of different things like the ESBuild stuff. And then someone chimed in and they were like, hey, by the way, have you tried setting TTY into your Docker Compose file as well as setting standard in? So TTY is already set in my Compose file over here. So if we jump up over here, yep, there it is set. Just nice for just getting some coloring in the terminal output and some other advantages as well. But yeah, the standard in stuff has no effect here. I did add it just to see like why the heck not, because nothing else was working. But yeah, I mean, I also just doubled down here and just mentioned that everything else worked, but this one isn't working. And, you know, I didn't mention this much earlier in the issue. And yeah, so I kind of wrote that, you know, one step I should probably take now is kind of just treat this like a bisection search, right? So check out an older version of code, rebuild, you know, identify the last known good state and keep repeating until I actually find this last known good state. And, you know, I never took computer science, never went to university, never went to college, never really read any hardcore like computer sciencey books. But this idea of like bisection search, super useful. You know, now nobody really uses phone books, but like, you know, the TLDR 30-second pitch of this one is like, let's say you have a phone book, right? The thing has like 5,000 pages or something, however many it has. It's been a long time since I've seen one. But yeah, it lists everybody's name who's listed in the phone book from A to Z. And the idea there is like, if you need to flip to someone who has a last name with S or something like that, you know, you can just open up that book randomly and, kind of find a point, like maybe you hit the J's or something like that, right? So everything before that J is completely out of the equation. There's no way S is going to be before J because the phone book is sorted alphabetically. So then it's like, well, everything after J is then fair game. So you split it again and again. And the idea there is like maybe after like 3 or 4 times of doing that, you'll find the S section. And then, likewise, you can fine tune it to find the exact person that you need. And before you know it, like you just went through 5,000 pages in like literally like 15 seconds or however long it takes. It's really good if you're dealing with something that is listed alphabetically, for example. So yeah, in this case, the git commits are, it's a timeline of commits. So I thought like, well, what I could probably do is like maybe just jump back down to Django 3.9 or something like that and like see if that works. And then if that works, then, I try using Django 4.0. And then if that works, then it's like, well, okay, boom, we found it. Like there's an issue somewhere between Django 4 and 4.1. And I could have repeated the same process using gunicorn, because it's been also updated over the years. But before doing that type of thing, I actually threw a tweet out here where, and keep in mind, it was like, it is Saturday morning when I did this here at 8:36 a.m. But yeah, I was like, if anyone's up for a debugging adventure here, here's all the details. Any help would be much appreciated. So within basically not even an hour of that, Jeff Triplett here, he's very well known in the Django community here. We both follow each other. But yeah, he mentioned that cached templates are enabled by default, which is now tripping you up, right? And then he linked to the Django documentation here. This is the release notes for Django 4.1. Under templates here, we can see that, yeah, the cache template loader is now enabled in development even when debug is set to true. And this options loader isn't specified, but you can specify a custom loader if you want to override that if you'd like. So, I started clicking around here and that loads up this link over here where we can see what this cache loader actually does. And, they kind of just say like, Django's templating system is really fast, but, basically blah, blah, blah. If you cache your templates, it's a really, really good idea to do. Like, I'm not discounting that. You should totally do it like all the time in production. In development, I don't know. I've never dealt with like majorly insanely big Django apps, like millions and millions of lines with thousands of templates. But generally in development, you just want to be able to update the file, reload your browser and be done with it, or even have live reloading if you have something hooked up there. But anyways, yeah, if you take a look here at this example, you can see that it does mention how you can customize your loaders. And I looked at this and I'm like, okay, well, this is basically what I have. This is, also very similar to what I have. If I go back to the code here, to the settings file, we can see that I have the directory set here. There's the base dir set. There's the backend. I also have appdir set to true. I think this docs or something said, like basically, if you're going to be loading a custom loader like this, you can't use apps true. That's fine. Whatever, it makes sense because, we have app directories over here being loaded into the loader. We don't need that appsdir true, I don't think. Well, you can, but I think that's the reason why we don't need it. But anyways, yeah, if you look at this, like, they've got this loaders list, but we do not have that loaders list. So what I did was, well, I noticed first of all that it's an actual list, and this in itself is another list here with a tuple. So I figured, okay, well, looking at this, maybe we can do something where if debug is set to true, then we can, because chances are like we're always going to need these loaders, like, this is like whatever, kind of just an example of how you can do a custom loader, but like these two are going to be common in development and production. So the first thing I thought of was like, okay, well, let's pop these things into a list by themselves. Let's call them like, I don't know, default loaders or something like that. And then we can have a cached loaders that will basically be this that we have selected here, except instead of this being duplicated, like hard-coded twice for the default one and the prod one, then it's just going to reference that variable. And then we can have an if condition here to pick which one to use. So what that really translates down to now is, let me undo this. Let's see. Well, I think I should probably go to the git diff here because I'm going to have to paste it in, I think something tells me. So going down here, yep, fixed, blah, 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 cool. Okay, so if I go to this commit here, we can actually see what I did to change that. Let me just grab this full file. It's a little bit easier for me to copy paste that one. Then we will go and take this whole thing, bring it back over here, and then overwrite what we have so it's a little bit easier to read. And then we're back to normal here. We can see nothing changed. If I do a git status, we're back to normal. But yeah, this is basically what I just mentioned before when we were looking at the docs. So we have this idea of the default loaders. There's the two there. Then we have the cached loaders here, which is loading up the default loaders, and the cached loader, which is, again, from the documentation here. over here. Yep, that's the exact same thing here, but instead of this list being hard-coded in there, it's just reading it from this default loaders variable that we have defined up here. So that gives us both of our loaders, depending on what we want to do. And then here for loaders, well, it just takes a list. So, and we go back to here, we can see, again, loaders just takes a list here. So then, yeah, there we go. So if debug, then we'll just use the default loaders, which is going to load it from the file system and app directories here. But also if we're dealing with production, then we actually want to use the cache loaders. So in that case, then yes, we absolutely want to have this cache loader over here, and that's it. So in prod, we're going to get the benefits of having the cache loader. In dev, everything is going to work. So if I do this, and I don't think I even need to reload everything here, but let's see, first of all, if I go to the index file here, let's get rid of all that. Let's put a whole bunch of B's here after the Django or something, phrase there, and reload here. And we can see all the B's are there. Everything works. Let's get rid of the B's, edit the file again, reload, and B's are gone. Then if you go to the page, for the home page over here, let's pop in some exclamation points, question marks there right before the Docker whale, and there they are. And if we go here and remove that and save that and go back and reload, and there we go. So everything is working perfectly fine. I'm not going to bother rebuilding this project on video in production mode and verify that the caching is working, but it is, and it's all good. So yeah, that was a fun little adventure of figuring out new things with Django. I don't know what caused them to make this setting here. Also, I should preface this one that I am using gunicorn in development and in production. I'm not using the built-in Django run server. So maybe it's possible that that run server does extra things for you to not have to worry about this. Maybe it's also going to be an issue. If you are using the run server, let me know if you had to make this change. I'm guessing they made it for a good reason. Django usually is a very stable project with good decisions for most things, I will say. But who knows, maybe this will change in the future to somehow go back to how it was a little bit. I don't know, but for right now, Django 4.17 and previous to that, yeah, this was an issue. And I hope this lets you figure out how to have templates get updated in development again without too much hassle, because really, going back to this file over here, it's not a huge amount of code here to get things to work. But yeah, with that said, if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. It really does help a lot. If you ever ran into this, let me know or let us know in the comments below. Happy to read that stuff. And also, yeah, what are some of your best tips for doing, this type of scenario here? When you want to load different loaders in different environments, feel like this is a pretty reasonable solution. But yeah, always open for improvements there. So yeah, again, thanks a lot for watching, and I will see you in the next video.